a romance novel, Save the Galaxy, by Ariana Daralte. Chapter 42, Plo Koon 2. Plo ended up arriving at Kildabe during the middle of the night cycle. When he exited his ship, he was met by a single Mandalorian who led him to an airlocked room. There were bunks along the walls, enough to fit 6 beings total, and controls which allowed him to flood the room with his preferred mix of gases. Next to the controls, someone had drawn some cartoonish versions of various non-oxygen breathing races with little speech bubbles saying their optimal atmosphere settings. Plo appreciated being able to spend the night not wearing his eye guards and respirator. The next day, he was awakened by a knocking on the airlock door. A quiet Mandalorian led him to meet the Mandalore in his office. "I hope you've enjoyed your stay," said the Mandalore. Plo could do nothing more than sip at some tea called shig through his mask, but the thought was appreciated.
"Indeed, Mandalore, I appreciate the accommodations, though I was not aware you required visiting sentients to list their romantic and sexual preferences to better accommodate them."
"Oh, Chuck," muttered the Mandalore. He closed his eyes and breathed deeply for a moment. "I apologize for the forwardness of my word, Master Koon. If you give me their armor description or name, if they gave it to you, I'll make sure they're reprimanded."
"I was not offended,"
said Plo. In fact, he was amused.
"I take it this has been an ongoing issue, Mandalore."
"Please call me Jaster."
"Then you may call me Plo."
"And yes, it's ridiculous the lengths that some of my people are going to. The trouble is that sometimes it works, and sometimes it sends the Jedi running for the hills. I'm pretty sure they haven't even caught up to Master Antilles yet, and that's not even mentioning Knight Femor."
"John Antilles?"
Plo didn't know a knight named Femor. "You know him?" asked Jaster.
"Only by reputation,"
said Plo. He'd also been sure the man was dead. Though then again, with such a common name as John Antilles, maybe there was just a long line of obscure Jedi claiming the name and never returning to the temple to verify. "Yes, well, he has, for lack of a better word, a fan club amongst the Mando Ade, especially those on the Outer Rim, although he's certainly not alone in Mandalorian admiration. They have lists and rankings for Jedi," said Jaster with a sigh.
"The task of a leader is often to contain explosions after they have happened,"
said Plo. Jaster laughed. "Well said. Now, the name and armor of my word. If they were leading you, then they were on duty and deserve a reprimand." Plo conceded a description. The Mandalorian had been young and nervous, so Plo had thought to spare them from punishment, but if they were on duty, they did need a talking to. "Now, what is it you'd like to know?" asked Jaster.
"The reports said the true Mandalorians have suffered from child abduction by Death Watch before?" "Yes. During the height of the Civil War, they would essentially wipe out a family, but take the Ade with them when they did, to bolster their ranks. Once those raids died down, they switched to actual abductions. They even hit Kildabe once while my Verde were away on a mission. We got those Ade back before they could go to ground, but it was a near thing. It's been 2 years without a report of them stealing any children from my people, so I had thought we had killed enough of them that they were not replenishing their numbers. However, we met full squads on Galadron." The implication was clear. Death Watch were getting their numbers from elsewhere. "The new Mandalorians are accusing both you and Death Watch of stealing their Ade,"
ventured Plo, using the Mandoa word to try to soften the statement. To his surprise, the man laughed. "They do lose Ade to us, but we don't abduct them. Tell me, if you were young and had the choice between becoming a merchant with no culture to speak of, or a warrior who gets to fly using jetpacks and be part of thousands of years of history, which would you choose?"
"You're saying they run away to join the true Mandalorians?"
"Yes, it happens more often in the lead to have members of both the new Mandalorians and the true Mandalorians. So the ad will flee to a sympathetic Bavodu, an aunt or uncle, or some other member of their clan who will raise them as a proper Mandalorian. There are some either neutral or true Mandalorians living in Sundari, though some of the Ade have been known to make the run across the desert to Kildabe or some other small town. Clan Kryz has a compound in Sundari, which the new Mandalorians claim is the capital of Mandalore, so they tend to have the most flow between the two groups. They have to deal with the new Mandalorians on Kalevala,
which is Kryz's territory anyway, so I guess they find it easier than most of the other clans. Duke Kryz, the clan head, maintains neutrality from all political affiliations. If he's in residence, he might be someone you could talk to for a perspective other than the new Mandos. What of those who don't profess allegiance to any of the three main political groups like Duke Kryz?
Blood was curious.
Well, in the past few months, the number of true Mandalorians has tripled. Can't imagine why.
He said sarcastically, obviously referring to the publication of the Mandalorians' dilemma.
The clan heads of the three largest clans and houses, Kryz, Vizsla, and Ren, all maintain neutrality so as to allow their members the freedom to choose. There have been rumors that that situation may change soon, but soon is a relative term. Lots of smaller clans follow their example. And there is House Mareel, my clan, which is growing every day. Clan Eldar, a relatively large clan of 100 or so Mandalore, swore their allegiance yesterday. A few more like that and House Mareel will be as large as the big three. There's smaller political groups as well. I'd class the Farmers of Concordia in their own isolationist group, for example, and splinter groups from all factions, like the Children of the Watch, who used to be Death Watch, but hated the way they treated children. There's some from the true Mandalorians who don't like aspects of my Super Commando Codex as well. How do Death Watch treat children?
Asked Blow. It was clear that the children leaving the new Mandalorians for the true Mandalorians were doing so willingly. If Death Watch was following Mandalorian culture properly, the children they took should be safe as well. Jaster grimaced. Poorly. They beat and starve them. They torture the really stubborn ones until their breaking can be built up with Death Watch propaganda as their foundation. If we can find the Ade within a few months of their abduction, with lots of love and care and therapy, they usually recover. Most Mandalorian children are too stubborn to break before then. But the ones they take young, or the ones who have been with them too long to resist, it's been heartbreaking whenever we get them back. Jaster was radiating despair.
Sometimes we just know it's them from the DNA test after they commit suicide to bomb us.
Plo put down his cup of shig and just tried to breathe through his anger. He also strengthened his shields. Being a strong telepath had its disadvantages, and one of those problems was that he often caught stray thoughts from other beings. In this case, a name. Arla. Jaster's despair at the name was not helping Plo's own anger about hearing of children being tortured and brainwashed.
You and your people have my deepest sympathies,
he said, putting as much emotion into his voice as he could since most of his facial expressions were obscured by his rebreathing goggles. The files on Death Watch had mentioned that they didn't treat their children well, but not to such an extent. Urgency to find the missing new Mandalorian children filled him.
I will do everything in my power to find the missing children. Thank you, and I'm sure the new Mandalorians will thank you once the Dikude realize we aren't stealing their Ade. Speaking of the new Mandalorians, I have some questions about them. Now that I know what is at stake, I'd like to get those answered and be on my way to Sundari. You're not stopping in to see Master Dooku.
Plo shook his head.
If I had more time, I would, but as it is, I need to contact the council, then be on my way. There is no time to waste.
Jaster seemed to appreciate his urgency.
What do you want to know? Have they sent any complaints to the true Mandalorians about their children going missing? They started to about a year ago. I'd say about half of them, and more since the book came out, were children who wanted to be raised more true Mandalorian. Whenever I found out that was the case, I let the new Mandos know their children are safe and simply wish to be raised elsewhere. Mandalorian law is that the child has the choice of where to live, not that the new Mandalorians acknowledge any of our laws. What do they acknowledge, then? Asked Plo. If you look back at the new Mandalorians' beginnings, they were founded right after the Dralhan, and were mostly made up of merchants who were off-world at the time, or who lived on kildabe, which is a sparsely populated desert world. So it was mostly spared the Dralhan. Those merchants suddenly found themselves even wealthier in the face of people who had lost everything to the bombings. As a result, they have a strong interest in favoring merchants and corporations while preventing Mandalore from ever again being the target of the Republic. Their laws are therefore focused almost completely on helping them maintain their wealth and security, whereas most ancient Mandalorian laws would be considered civil laws.
This was obviously a topic the Mandalore had given a lot of thought to.
So they have no laws relating to children or family? Not as far as I'm aware. They seem to follow Republic ideas of family, though they're strangely respectful of those nobles who've managed to retain their titles over the years on Kalevala. Clan Kriz is one of the few to do so while also maintaining their wealth of political clout. So I think that's how Duke Kriz manages to coexist with them. Have you met with them before? Several times, Jaster said with a grimace. They think anyone wearing armor is a brutal barbarian and treat you like you're a bomb about to go off.
Jaster waved a dismissive hand.
I could deal with it if it was just that, but their abandonment of Mandalorian culture means they've also abandoned one of the things that makes Mandalorians unique. Your armor?
Wondered Plo.
Well, yes. But besides the martial elements of our culture, they've also thrown out our tolerance and acceptance of those who are different. Anybody can become a Mandalorian, and our people are a mix of so many different species, you should see what the DNA throws up sometimes.
He had a fine grin on his face.
We also free a lot of slaves and integrate them into our culture. We're like a stew made up of a lot of different ingredients, both common and rare, but the new Mandalorians have slowly been reducing that stew to a few approved ingredients. You're not going to find any accommodations for Keldorians in Sudari, or for any species other than humans for that matter. And even among humans, they're picky. I've never seen so many blondes in one place in my life until I visited Sudari.
That was unfortunate to hear. Not that Plo cared about having proper accommodations, but he now was extremely worried for the children who didn't fit the perfect new Mandalorian mold. What did the new Mandalorians do when a child was born with characteristics from the many species that could interbreed with humans?
Do you know if orphanages in Sudari have been missing children?
He asked.
Orphanages?
Asked Jaster slowly, as if testing out the word.
Is that a thing for orphans? It's where orphans live while waiting to be adopted or until they age out,
explained Plo, realizing as he did that of course the Mandalorians wouldn't have a word for orphanage. Their entire culture emphasized the importance of taking care of children.
Jaster seemed a bit appalled by the idea. Yet we don't have those. The only time an ad doesn't get adopted is when they don't want to be, or they have people who already have a claim to them who they want to return to. Sometimes a kid has a bad association with having a boar, so they get lots of Babodu instead, or are adopted by a clan as a whole. That sounds wonderful,
said Plo, meaning each and every word. If only the rest of the galaxy took care of their children so well.
Is there anything else you think I need to know to rescue these children?
Jaster nodded.
We're in the middle of a campaign against Death Watch. They've set up at least one base on Concordia, which is a maze of mining facilities and tunnels,
he said with a grimace.
If they have any of the new Mandalorian Ade, they might have taken them there. My Django is in charge of the campaign, so you will have to coordinate with him. He mentioned yesterday asking for Jedi help in finding the base, though I don't know how that will work since the mines are all for Beskar.
That was an interesting question, considering its muffling properties against the Force.
I would be pleased to assist in the search, after I confirm that Death Watch has the new Mandalorian children.
The Force was urging him to move.
I will contact you if I have any other questions, Jaster. Thank you for your help.